So Sam Bankman-Fried, as we just told you at some length, was the headliner. Sam Bankman-Fried, everybody! Applause, applause, applause. At the New York Times Deal Book Summit a few hours ago as a top business leader. Can't overstate how weird it was. At one point, Andrew Sorkin from the New York Times, who promoted Sam Bankman-Fried on television at length in previous months and years, asked how customers could learn to be safe online, as if Sam Bankman-Fried just didn't rip off his own customers. But the main takeaway from the whole thing is that Sam Bankman-Fried isn't stupid. He knows he's bulletproof. He knows the Democratic Party and the SEC and his friend Gary Gensler won't touch him. So watch Sam Bankman-Fried explain that actually he's not very worried about criminal charges.
How concerned are you about criminal liability at this point?
So I don't think that, I mean, obviously I don't personally think that I have, but I think the real answer is that's not, it sounds weird to say, but I think the real answer is that's not what I'm focusing on. I mean, look, I've had a bad month. This has not been a fun month for me, but that's not what matters here.
I've had a bad month. It's all about me and my personal journey, but being held accountable by regulators, the Justice Department, the U.S. Congress, these are my friends. I paid for them. Boy, if there's ever been a clear window into the deep corruption we really need to get rid of if we're going to return to representative democracy, it's that right there. So Sam Bankman-Fried seems so confident that he's untouchable that he admitted in public to commingling funds between FTX, his crypto exchange, and a separate company he controlled. That's the kind of thing that regulators would normally care about, but in this case, for some reason, didn't. Watch.
FTX didn't have bank accounts. It didn't have any bank accounts globally. We were trying to get them. It took us a while, took us a few years. And there are customers who wanted to wire money to FTX. And so I think in the meantime, some of them were wiring money to Alameda Research to get credited on FTX. And I think that was a substantial sum. And I think that the FTX's internal accounting did correctly, effectively try to debit Alameda for those funds.
You know, the New York Times is not a TV show, it's a newspaper. And when they want to find out about somebody, we can speak from firsthand experience, they put a whole bunch of reporters on the story for months. And they may interview the person they're writing about. They also interview a lot of other people, and they create a full account of what they claimed happened. They're not doing that with this guy. They're bringing him on to allow him to whitewash what he did. But aware that he may have had a bad week, as he just said, Bankman-Fried tried to do some damage control. Watch this.
Was there commingling of funds? That's what it appears like. It appears like there's been a genuine commingling of the funds that are of FTX customers that were not supposed to be commingled with your separate firm.
I didn't knowingly commingle funds. I wasn't trying to commingle funds.
Vivek Ramaswamy is the founder and executive chairman of Strive Asset Management and deeply familiar with the world of finance. He joins us tonight. Vivek, thanks so much for coming on. So what was lacking, I felt, in all of this was the moral outrage you would associate with someone who apparently stole billions from, like, retirement funds. But the New York Times treated him like, yeah, maybe he got a little, you did some bad things or whatever. But there's no, like, it's not like he's Donald Trump or something, right? Like, what is that?
You know, the thing that was striking about this, Tucker, is it actually reminded me of a lot of what we saw in the aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis, where you had firms that, again, positioned themselves like they wanted to be the good guys, the Goldman Sachses, the Morgan Stanleys. And in fact, the difference back then was that they even got bailed out by the government directly at the public fisc. Now, here in the case of SBF, this is a guy who wore T-shirt and shorts. And the thing that was fascinating for me for watching that, Tucker, today wasn't so much SBF. He's really good at deflection, using a lot of technocratic language to deflect accountability. The thing that was actually interesting was looking at the people in the audience, nervously laughing, distancing themselves from him. And to me, when I was thinking about what happened in 2008, Tucker, I think the interesting part of this is the people in that audience, the other financial elites who now are trying to distance themselves from the guy who wore a T-shirt and shorts, actually are not all that different from him in kind. They may be different in degree, but not in kind. And I think that's the thing that people actually struggle with this SBF story if they're in elite finance. When they look themselves in the mirror and look at the kinds of things that happened in 2008, you know what? It's an uncomfortable parallel and an uncomfortable similarity. And in a certain sense, he's just one of them and they're just one of him. That was one of my takeaways from actually watching today.
Well, that's the deepest truth of this whole thing. That's exactly right. Vivek Ramaswamy, thank you for your insightful analysis of that. Speaking from knowledge.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Subscribe to the Fox News YouTube channel to catch our nightly opens, stories that are changing the world and changing your life. From Tucker Carlson Tonight.